what is brand? Brand is experience.
It's a bit like my dad jokes with my kids. There's a very fine line between cultural anchoring and trend chasing.
Western giants, they just cannot rely on their heritage anymore. They need to be as fast as Chinese brands and as detailed as Korean brands.
The Hot Pot Table, strategic conversations served hot. I'm Jonathan Travers-Smith. Today served on the table, the reverse Korean wave, Chinese beauty brands gaining ground in Korea, why luxury is no longer a store visit, it's a 48-hour sleepover, and brands are ditching the corporate voice for internet madness and personality tests. So joining me at the table today is our regular co-host Fan, and we have a very special guest for our first segment. Adam will be joining us a little bit later in the show. So without further ado, we are thrilled to welcome Tracy Shim to the table. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to have you with us. By way of introduction, Tracy is a seasoned marketing strategist with over 20 years of experience at major giants like Nike, Johnson & Johnson, and many others besides. Today, she's a managing partner at the Seoul-based research firm Sentipl. And Tracy, your recent articles caught our eye very much in our square area of focus, which is Chinese and sea beauty, capturing the hearts of Korean Gen Z consumers. And that was a real kind of light bulb moment for us. Obviously, for decades, the flow of beauty trends was typically one way, where Korea led the way, and they were exporting particular looks like glass skin and eggshell skin. And obviously, K-pop aesthetics have been around in China for some time. So 2026, we're seeing a reverse wave. For listeners who weren't aware, can you briefly give us an insight into what these C-style or Douyin makeup trends are and how they have won over Korean Gen Z?
Sure. It's fascinating time to look at the Korean market these days. For a long time, K-beauty was the leading trendsetter, but recently the landscape has become much more complex. For years, we focused on long multi-step routine, but lately the trend shifted toward the skin minimalism. We sometimes call it skip care. This made our daily beauty routine very simple, but it also left the visual gaps in the market. Consumers, especially Gen Z, started to craving something more dramatic and fun. That's where C-Beauty stepped in. They captured the Gen Z's imagination with three main things, I believe. First is a visual impact, and second, social media agility and accessibility. First of all, the brands like Flower Nose, the Chinese brand, offer a fancy and decorative aesthetics that we haven't seen in the minimalist heavy K-beauty scene. It feels like a collector's item rather than just makeup. And I've heard a lot of younger Korean people say the package is beautiful. I have never tested, but even though if I don't like it, I will just use an accessory. And second one is the Douyin makeup and Wang Hong look became a huge hit on short form videos. And because it's transformative, it's completely changed your look, which makes for great video contents. And in the past, beauty was all about looking natural. But now, especially for Gen Z, it's about being camera ready. They aren't trying to hide the fact that they are wearing makeup. Instead, they want to look flawless on the screen. It's what I call calculated perfection. You spend a lot of time and effort to create a look that seems perfect and polish it in every photo. And it's not just about the daily life anymore. It's about creating a powerful visual identity on social media. Lastly, we cannot ignore the price accessibility. In the early stage, C-beauty brands gained a huge popularity because they offer high-end, luxury-looking packaging product at a very low cost. And it allowed the Gen Zs, especially student and young professional, to collect these items without feeling any financial burden. Although the price have slightly increased recently as these brands established official sales channel in Korea. But still, the initial price to quality surprise was a major hook. And combined with the visa-free travel to China, a lot of Korean people, especially younger ones, they travel to Shanghai all the time these days. And the platforms like AliExpress, consumers could experience this product directly. And this effectively broke down the old barrier of distrust and replaced them with a mix of newness and regained the credibility.
That's fascinating. It's really interesting how, when you look at how popular Korean beauty was in China, your point is really valid there, which is the aesthetic ideal of many Chinese consumers at the time was exactly what Korean brands were offering. So beautiful, simplistic packaging, but then that sort of pairs with the skin tone and the perfection that people were looking for in their look. I think it's really fascinating because when I think of Korea, there's that side of things, but then you've got the sort of big, brash, neon side of K-pop culture and all those things. So it seems interesting to me that sort of China with Douyin, that's almost coming back the other way because of the visual richness. What exactly is it that you think about that sense of visual innovation, or kind of, it's really quite in your face. Why is that capturing Gen Z in Korea specifically? What are they missing, or what are they craving?
I mean, I think it's not only for Korea, it's about the Gen Zs. They grew up with a smartphone in their hands and built their identity through short-form videos. I think they have two different identity. They wear two different style makeup for the short form and for the regular life. Like when they go to work or to school, they wear natural makeup. But sometimes to create the short form video, they want that drastic, high glam style makeup for that special occasion and to create the video content.
And Fan, I guess when we look at Chinese consumers, they are becoming a bit more pragmatic. We've spoken about this on previous podcasts where, the consumer is still spending, but they're being very practical about how they're spending. Is there potentially attractiveness in overseas markets because of innovation at certain price points? How do you view this?
I think it's so Chinese consumers right now are very educated. I actually just came back from China a few days ago, and you can hear people talking about the economy is bad and this and that is bad. But actually, the deeper topic here is that the spending behavior has changed. And then so before, of course, we were looking at logos and the brand names, and in a way, same for Korean beauty products like a few years ago, because it's imported, and then so we just buy it even without trying it. But now is that there are a lot of options coming from China. Let it be flower snows and florists. Those are very like dramatic and very dreamy and very, very collectible packaging. But also we have more high-end like Ping, and also we have doll, and which is very affordable, and especially for college students. So I think it's of course, so it's easier for, I would say, other Asian markets to accept our Chinese beauty brands. A is that it's easier for them to access it, and B is that our skin tones are more similar. I think that's also another topic here. But going overseas, I think there are going to be more research to be done, because it's the same problem that we have when we only could buy Western brands, right? 'Cause skin tone, the color code doesn't match, or like the drastic look that American female are searching for, it just doesn't work on Chinese. Smoky eyes, that's one example. It just doesn't work. So I think the trend on TikTok and also on Douyin and those makeover effect that Chinese influencers and Chinese Wanhong are doing with makeup, it's easily, and also I can totally understand the popularity in Korean market, and not sure about Japanese market actually. That's something that we need to find out. But yeah, I think it's going to take longer way. That being said, Glam, the brand owned by Shein, it's only being sold to Western market. That is actually just like a very typical Chinese beauty brand, and that's also very popular in Western market as well. But I think that is mainly because of the affordability, because they break the rule of pricing certain product at certain price range, and you can just get 10 euro for a blush or something that really is good. So I think that is easy to enter, but for higher price point brands like Ping and also other skincare brands, they have bigger challenge.
Yeah, I think the pricing is always going to be there. We've seen lots of Chinese brands innovating on products, but then there is a tradition there of keeping costs down. China's a very pragmatic market. We keep using that term, pragmatic luxury. That being said, you need to drive desire, and you need to drive the right cultural associations. So Tracy, we saw recently the actress Han Ga-in, she went viral for getting a Wang Hong style makeup in transformation, making herself look like a Chinese influencer, or certainly matching with that aesthetic when she was in Shanghai. You also have Jang Won-young, who was, a spokesperson or certainly introducing Chaji tea, the Chinese tea brand, to the Korean audience as well. Does this fit into a wider context? Is there a lifestyle shift? Is there a sort of look towards China, or are these just kind of examples of things that may indicate a future trend?
That's a great point about Hangain and Jang Won-young. I've seen that YouTube video about it. But to answer your question, I don't see these as a permanent lifestyle shift. In my opinion, it's closer to a fad for now. As we all know, Korean Gen Zs around the world, they are extremely sensitive about what's new. And the trend cycle move incredibly fast. So the real reason I'm saying it's not a permanent lifestyle shift is what I call the lifestyle barrier. While these celebrity moments are viral and exciting, there is a fundamental difference in how we define daily beauty, though. In Korea, our ultimate goal is quote unquote 꾸안꾸, we say. This is a very famous Korean slang for low-key beauty, basically looking naturally beautiful without appearing like you try too hard. Korean people love that subtle glow and a very clean and healthy look. On the other hand, the sea beauty style, like Wang Hong look Hangain tried, is what we call 꾸꾸꾸, which means being high glam and looking perfectly polished. But don't get me wrong, it's fantastic for special occasion, special events, or viral video, but it doesn't quite fit the daily natural look that most Korean people prefer for work or school. For sea beauty brands to stay for the longer term in Korea, I think they have to move beyond being just visual collector's item. They need to create the mega hit product that people can use for their everyday natural look. Without moving from one-time purchase to daily necessity, it will be hard to beat the deep trust that K-beauty and Western brands have built over the years.
It's a really interesting point on Western brands because Korea is known globally as, the skincare market. So Korean brands know the Korean market. They obviously then can extend outwards into Asian markets. When you look at Western brands, we advise many of them on their routes into China and understanding what's the same and what's very different about the market. And it's so critical for items you're going to put on your skin or having contact with your body. Given that there's this interplay between Japan, Korea, and mainland China, what is the difficulty then potentially for some of those big Western brands? Obviously, L'Oreal and some of the larger groups, Estee Lauder, they're just known, they have brand equity, they have brand trust. But given the interplay between markets within Asia, does that create problems for those big mass houses that exist in Western markets?
Those Western giants, they still have a strong seat at the table because they hold the scientific authority that the savvy consumers, like Korean consumers, trust and believe in. But they just cannot rely on their heritage anymore, just like they have been doing so far. They need to be as fast as Chinese brands and as detailed as Korean brands. In the end, the winner in Asian market, in Korean market, will not be about East versus West. It will be just the brand that delivers the best performance with a reliable story, no matter where it comes from.
It's more like a question because if you go on Red Note, then there is a genuine respect from Chinese female towards Korean female, like the care that Korean female took on themselves on daily life and also like always appear flawless no matter how heavy or how light is the makeup. But I would say the English word is probably effortless, right? Effortless chic. And that is also a trending, not just in China, it's actually everywhere around the world, right? There is the makeup or like the the look that you go out for daily life, and there's also a look that you put on TikTok or on Red Note or on Instagram. But what I see in China is that when it's quite extreme, so of course there's like dramatic makeup for the Wang Hong, and there's daily go to office makeup just to show respect to people and also to make yourself feel more powerful. But there's also like the true effortless is really not wearing any makeup. But I'm not sure if that's the same thing in the Korean market or some makeup would always be there.
It's interesting thing is that effortless chic doesn't mean no makeup. Actually, you spend a lot of time to do the makeup but you have to make it like you haven't done anything. That's the key thing. So actually, a lot of people spend like hours to look like that, and like layers of foundation, thin layers of foundation, and like they still use a contouring highlighter, but looks like they haven't done anything. So
Yeah.
I think no makeup is not an option for a Korean woman, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's the huge difference between, I would say, like in general, the Asian market versus the Western market. And within the Asian market, Chinese and Korean and Japanese are also very different, because there's definitely like also in China, like female that would try sew on the same as Korean female, like layers of painting just to look natural. But then there's also like completely no makeup. But that part of the audience, I think those are the biggest challenge for the Western big names, because they're not competing with Chinese skincare brands or Chinese makeup brands. They're competing with the Chinese and also Korean imei. So it's beauty clinic and also like the treatment that is so affordable and so accessible in the Asian market. Whereas in the US or in Western market, it's so pricey that it's not affordable for many people. So that's why the scientific part is there. We really use technology.
True.
Just before we wrap up, Tracy, you mentioned a really important point there, which is about the travel back and forth. So, China over the post-COVID period has sort of opened up to various nations. There's new visa-free policy, which finally includes the UK. Well done. But it's been in place with South Korea for a long time now. Can you tell me more about these kind of trend safaris where you have Koreans flying to Shanghai and other cities in China to kind of either shop or to kind of understand what's happening within the Chinese market?
Yeah, it has been very interesting to observe, because when I live in China, it was back in 2007, like long time ago. And that time, not many Korean people actually travel to Shanghai because they need a visa. But these days, younger generation, they go to Shanghai so often. Some of my like ex-co-workers, they go to Shanghai almost like every month, because they said Shanghai changes so fast. So every time they go, they feel different. And previously, some of the Korean people has a prejudice about Chinese culture, but now it became an exotic but fascinating culture to enjoy for younger generation. So they the Adidas recently launched the like Chinese style outfit. And I heard that's not well received in Chinese market, but that's like super popular in Korea. People want to get it. So sometimes they fly to Shanghai to get it. And it's really interesting. And the Chinese dessert was very popular in Korea, the tanghuru. That was like huge in Korea, like last year. Like everybody eat it. Like everybody take a photo with it. Those type of Chinese culture like coming to Korea and became the new type of hip for younger generation. So it's interesting to see.
I think that tanghulu deserve to be exported everywhere across the world. Obviously, it's a seasonal thing with, is it hawthorn fruit, Fan?
I think it's hawthorn. But you can make tanghulu with everything right now. That's actually a new trend among Chinese younger generation. Yeah, so you can make tanghulu with strawberry, kiwi, and anything seasonal you can get in your supermarket.
Well, they're not only of a particular time, living in Beijing, but they used to come out every autumn, where I guess the farmers would bring them in from the outside, and so it's very reminiscent of a particular time. But it's delicious, and it's a cultural phenomena. Often just come from demand from consumers. So if it's delicious and it's interesting, particularly if it looks interesting, as tanghulu do, then often you get that cultural crossover. Well, Tracy, we would love to get you back for another podcast, because this has been super insightful. And I know there's many other topics we can touch on in this area, the crossover within inter-Asia markets, but particularly mainland China and South Korea. Takeaways here, it's certainly for global brands, it's really important that they know when they're looking at the Asian market, you're not just competing with domestic brands from a particular market anymore. You need to be looking at wider Asia and understand the flows and the entire cross-border ecosystem that moves very quickly. Tracy, thank you so much for your time and for joining us at the Hot Pot table today.
Okay, it was a great conversation. Thank you for having me.
Cheers. Speak soon.
Thank you.
We're going to take a very quick breather before we dive into our next topic. If you're finding today's discussion valuable, you're likely realizing that in dynamic markets like China, yesterday's strategy just doesn't cut it. At Hot Pot, we don't just observe these shifts, we navigate them. Our DNA is built on delivering commercial and operational success across Asia by separating the hype from the real, actionable opportunities. For those of you who need to take these insights back to your boardrooms or marketing teams, we have 2 specific ways to help. Number 1, the China Playbook. This is our deep dive resource where we strip away the headlines to give you the raw data, proprietary charts, and the so what analysis you need for your roadmap. And 2, strategic partnership with the Hotpot team. If you want to discuss how to apply the learnings from this podcast directly to your brand and drive commercial uplift, head over to hotpotagency.com and get in touch with the team. The links for both are in the show notes below. All right, pull your chairs back in. Let's get back to the table for topic 2. Okay, Adam, great to have you with us. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, we're going to crack on into topic 2. So, is the future of shopping in luxury hotels? In Asian retail, the traditional transactional model is really gasping for air, and we're moving much more towards a model of immersive commerce, where the line between a holiday and a shopping trip has completely vanished. So, Adam, I remember when a luxury experience was just, a nice sofa and a glass of champagne in a VIP lounge when someone was about to bring you, an Hermes bag to have a look at. Not me personally, but, speaking for a friend. In January this year, Louis Vuitton opened a global hotel in Shanghai where everything is for sale. That's the bed sheets, the Art de Vivre collection. And so what they have built there really is an immersive experience. And from a shopping perspective, it's not a 20-minute browse and with a sales assistant. It is Louis Vuitton creating essentially 48 hours of complete undivided attention to the brand itself. So my question to you is, this hotel as a showroom, is that the final boss of retail, or potentially does it risk devaluing the brand by making it far too available?
Yeah, as you said, it doesn't change my personal capacity to try these luxury brands or experiences, but I do find this really interesting as a trend. And I guess we've always talked about return on investment, and this is really looking at return on experience. And I think it's very clever from brands like LV because it's actually giving them an opportunity to capture total wallet share from these ultra high net worth individuals. And you're essentially turning a luxury brand hotel into a fully branded ecosystem. If you think about what's gone before, I guess there's a level of being quite disjointed in terms of the channels through which you target. As you said, 20 minutes in a store versus 48 hours in a hotel brings so many opportunities. And a bit more subtle selling, and also contextual selling as well, because if you think about that $5,000 Art de Vivre lamp, it's going to be much more compelling to buy it when it's lit up in a beautifully curated room versus on a shelf. You mentioned final boss of retail. Who knows where we're going to end up with retail, but it is certainly a big move forward, because think of the data that these brands are now getting. It's actually really getting into deep personalization. You know what someone has for breakfast. You know what someone's sleep patterns are. You know how they potentially lounge. And that's really powerful data for them. And also you're looking at, okay, it's costs a lot to set up a hotel and run a hotel, but actually think about the cost of acquisition from a lifetime value point of view. Again, coming back to 20 minutes in a store versus 48 hours, it's a lot more compelling, and you're very likely to capture someone's value for a longer period of time. And of course there's risk. There's always risk in any activity you do, and there's probably more scope for things to go wrong. But if I think about modern luxury, I think about access and intimacy, and I think a hotel really dials that up in terms of exclusivity and access to brand prestige, and that is a very powerful thing. So I'm really compelled by this trend, seeing it not just in China but all over the world as well. Dwell time, conversion versus immersion, and brand stickiness are the key things that jump to mind.
Yeah, I guess the question would be, does every brand have a right to do this? I think it means something that it's LV. They've been about travel. They've been about, obviously they're selling an end product, but they've been around for a very long time. They have so much brand equity. Therefore, they almost have the license and the authority to go and build a hotel and do a whole experience. Can I, if I am on running, it's, has slightly less history, or if I'm a challenger brand, can I just rock up in Chengdu and build myself a branded hotel?
Maybe not a branded hotel, but definitely like placement in the hotel, no, because that's just a natural.
That's a natural additional question, right? It's like when I think about brand placement in a hotel, I feel a bit put off. If I've paid for a nice hotel room, if I'm on holiday or with business, and there's something in the room that feels like it's trying to sell to me, I'm like, come on, I've paid for this room. Why am I getting this? Fan, I'm sensing you disagree, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
It's actually the two You already mentioned the Louis Vuitton, like the reason that they can do is because they have been about travel from the day one. And then so if you ask me another brand who can do a hotel, it's going to be Montblanc, which is also fully about travel. But another word is consuming scenario, right? And that's the word that we've been talking up and down. And because the key is that you cannot sell very hard to people and just like shouting, hey, look at this pattern, look at my monogram, and then price tag at 3,000 euro, buy it. But you have to let people be able to experience your product and picture themselves in it. And before we've been doing it with editorial content or video content or influencer content, but right now it's another entry point for the consumer to fully like literally experience it themselves. And so it's not going to be like hard sell. Of course, Louis Vuitton hotel, just the name alone, it sells itself already. Mass can also do that, right? Because like in order to buy a Birkin bag, you have to buy the same equivalent amount of other things, including blankets, including dishes and stuff like that. So there are many brands who have that wide range of assortment to begin with that they're capable of having a hotel. But for brands like, for example, On Running, I'm not sure if you guys have noticed, but definitely like in China, there are many hotels right now having bicycles in front of their downstairs. So I think Temple House, now Upper House, like because all of them right now are called Upper House. So the one in Chengdu, they have bicycles, so you can rent it from them, and you can take it out for a city bike, and those are branded bicycles as well. And then so, for example, if you are on running, then you have to choose a city and a hotel that has running route. So it cannot just be in the middle of the city, right? But if you're like on a mountain or if you're like a bit remote, then you offer this as a service. So because people, even runners, not every single one of them bring their own running shoes, but if it's available at the hotel and you can think of it, and then there's a running route.
Yeah.
And that is like the placement right there.
I might say I agree with that. So obviously direct relevance to products is important. But I was listening to a podcast a little while ago, or maybe it was an audiobook on sort of marketing strategies and brand strategies. And one thing that really stuck with me is that the sign of a strong brand is that if Nike opened a hotel tomorrow, even if you'd never seen anything, you have an idea of what every experience is going to be like. Right. And I love that as a sort of collective thought. It's like, I know what breakfast would look like in a Nike hotel. I know I'd expect to see some tech on the walls, like tracking heart rate. And I would expect the mood and the vibe to be positive, energetic, bright colors. That's the sign of a great brand. So a brand has that, then perhaps you can build one of these experiences. But if you don't, it's not something we would be recommending brands jump into. And obviously it's a very significant outlay.
Yeah, because brand is experience, right? So that's the one sentence. What is brand? Brand is experience.
And maybe that's a test you can do, right? Is if you have an up and coming brand, do you know innately what an experience like this would look like for your brand, as not because you're going to do it, but as a test to the strength and depth of the brand that you have? And Adam, we'd looked at a couple of local players. A couple of things that Japan, just continuing on a theme, the cross and inter-Asia market flow is super interesting. There's a brand, Fufu, in Japan, where they basically brought the idea of hot springs into the heart of Ginza, like very central retail luxury destination in Tokyo. Is this something where that's actually sort of post-pandemic and it's a tactic to capture high net worth spend? Or, is this a slightly different approach to capturing the luxury consumer that may exist, 10, 20 years from now?
It's certainly clever. I think there must be some psychological aspect to feeling a bit more relaxed and loosening your wallet. I certainly feel that way. Yeah, look, we've talked a long time around kind of the integration of hospitality and retail and building brand equity in hybrid spaces. And I think this is particularly interesting because you're removing that friction of shopping and replacing it with the flow of living. I think that you're giving experiential anchors and ultimately catching consumers, as I said, when they're most relaxed. And I think that's something that has been moving that way for a long time, and I think it's a very clever tactic from that Japanese brand, and expect to see more and more of that as we go forward.
And Fan, in terms of local players, there was Songzan, which I believe started off with a number of locations across Tibet and maybe Qinghai, certainly that area in China. They are an experience and they are a hospitality experience, but they have their own clothing lines and they have fashion shows with their own staff where the look and the feel is really baked into the whole experience. Is that unique to China? Like, what are the unique things at play there that make Songzan be able to do that?
I think it's not unique to China, but Songzan is definitely unique to, I would say, the whole world, because they have geographically they're there, and also they have the cultural richness they know what they're trying to promote, because they are promoting and they're sharing that part of the culture with the rest of China and also the rest of the world. So that it's very easy for them just to build a whole universe and then to scale on top of that. And also I think there are many like local hotels in China that many brands have collaborated with already. And not saying it necessarily, but mainly in the hotel that located in very popular and also very like culturally rich and also very naturally rich area like Lijiang or Yangshuo or Tibet or Qinghai. So those are not Beijing or Shanghai, but those are other parts of China that historically has so much to tell and so much to share. And so the way that they built the hotel, the way that they run the hotel is correlating with the nature and the natural surrounding that they're sitting with. And also like many brands, they have been collaborating, of course, at starting with just on private dinner and hosting together. But now you can also see that there are other things, like for example, like items that get into the hotel, but actually from the brand. And there's a good example. I was talking to a client, and the client was having holiday in Aman in Phuket.
Very nice.
Very nice. In that hotel, there is a bathing robe, and she tried it on, and she loved it so much because it's just so soft and everything. And she asked her husband to go downstairs to buy for her immediately. He didn't buy it because it turned out to be $1,000. You see, but people will get triggered into shopping behavior as soon as they feel, oh, this is so good.
Yeah. Well, you could just do it the British way, where you just put it in your suitcase and forget to take it out again. Kidding. Not advocating for crime here. Yeah, but both of those are examples where, as you said, like the experience happened, you had the item, it's all wrapped up in the whole experience that you're having.
Yeah.
And then you want to take a piece of that home with you, ideally paying for it.
I did have a question. We know how important retail associates and store staff have been in China over the years. What does the new retail associate store staff look like when they may actually have to be a concierge at the same time in a hotel or facilitate spa treatments? So yeah, I did have a thought as to kind of how that industry in itself will evolve. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts.
Because it's actually already very, very similar, no? Because not any brands, but if you think of like luxury brands like Louis Vuitton, like those big houses, then when you get welcomed and serviced by the staff and also the client advisors in the store, it's very, very similar in terms of hospitality compared to luxury or high-end hotel. And so I think that is like the natural link that they have there, because hotel has been luxury, right? And also if you think about it, LVMH, they bought Orient Express, right? That's so luxury is not just about clothing or handbags or like or the mass consumption, but it's about like that level of lifestyle. And then within that level, there are many things that you can do.
Yeah, it's the picture and the associations you build up for the brand over time that build the brand. Then this is really interesting, where you're not just doing, the Orient Express as a kind of pop-up. You're owning it. You are, yes, driving revenue for people that have that experience and pay for that travel. But then it's a win-win, because you're building the brand with that storytelling and the content and the association with high-end experiences. And I think something I draw from what both of you have said is that you have a cash-rich, time-poor consumer who is wealthy, and actually you can shortcut these experiences. So could be a trip to Singapore where you are doing retail and you're staying in an amazing hotel and you're dining and you're having wellness. Increasingly we're seeing those kind of trends where all of the needs of that high net worth or affluent consumer are being met within 24, 48 hours. The extra luxury perhaps is time. It's the time you get back. It's the photos you get. You didn't have to be there for 2 weeks. It's just something that speaks to your lifestyle and is beautifully created to you.
Yeah. Add on top, there's also a restaurant to wrap this up. Next time you guys in Heathrow, you should definitely try the Louis Vuitton Cafe, because you can feel the world around you.
Interesting.
It's right next to Louis Vuitton.
I'm not target market, but I will definitely give that a go. Maybe we are target market.
The wine is good, and also instead of just waiting on the bench or the oyster bar right next to it, the same price, but you get Louis Vuitton service and also everything. You can really feel the brand, and their wine is good.
Fan, I will take that on in the name of research. So you heard it here first. No. So to wrap this up, really interesting discussion. I think that for global brands, the ability to stop seeing hotels and retail as separate sectors and look at the liminal lines between the two, I think is super interesting. I also think that looking at forms of hospitality as long form advertising, where you're measuring ROI as not just the room rate, but also the basket size at checkout, makes sense for brands that have the authority to do so. So perhaps your next store might need a concierge, might need 24-hour room service menu to go with it. So, final topic for today, topic 3, is brand youthfulness, how to actually win Gen Z or Gen Z in China. Their younger doesn't just mean a fresh coat of paint. In China, if a brand isn't speaking the language of the internet and driving relevance, in this case, I mean the weird part of the internet, it is invisible. So Fan, we're seeing the rise of certain trends like insane literature, so fafeng wenshui, and memes in brand communications. It means that brands are now leaning into things like personality tests, like the newly coined SBTI, to go with MBTI, and they're using that to categorize their products. So what this feels like is very much a move away from a corporate voice in favor of something much more chaotic and standout. In your opinion, Fan, is this brand's trying hard to be cool? Is it social currency, or is it something more valuable now than brand heritage? Is just that standout effect based on youth and based on the modern zeitgeist?
I think that is actually not like in the whole long river of marketing, that's not new, but it doesn't apply to all the brands. So for example, no matter how trendy the SBTI can go, there are many brands that just like simply cannot jump on the bandwagon. So all the luxury, all the high-end one, they cannot. But there are many, many other brands like so facing like for example FMCG or like facing the mass audiences, then they need to catch those trends because those are like very rare opportunity for them to get awareness. So the SBTI is actually it's done by a Bilibili content creator and based on MBTI. And I'm not gonna say the words here, but we all know what does SB means, right? In Chinese.
Do you know what that's? I do, but this is the first time that penny has dropped on my side. Yep.
Yeah, so that is literally that. So it's really it's a joke, and then you think it's like everything looks so legit, looks so serious, but when you read between the line, it's all jokes.
Well, let's do a polite translation. It's basically like the stupidity personality type indicator, but much ruder in Chinese.
Yes, yes, and also I did the test. I'm a joker, so it's like so for MBTI I'm commander, and then for SBTI I'm a joker, and it's like it's very fun in the beginning, but there's like very sad truth lying behind. But I totally understand why brand would jump on it, especially brands like Duolingo or like or Tencent or like all the others brands that are ready just to go very personalized. But it's nothing that is unique to China because Duolingo has been crazy since they started. They literally hosted rave in Germany, right? And but also the recent KitKat got stolen thing. So you see how many brands also followed that, right? And also I think it all started. Who was that? Because I'm not that old, so I remember when McDonald's was really being like a real person on Twitter back then when it was still Twitter, and then you see brands just like interacting with McDonald's. So it's the freedom, and also it's like the real person behind it that makes it look like, oh, it's going insane because it's not following the rule book that many brands would think that there is a rule book. So yeah, and it's getting attention, right? People love it.
It's actually, that's just triggered something in my mind. We did a campaign many years ago now for Galeries Lafayette in Paris. And it was a great piece of creative from our strategist at the time, where we, coming up to, was it Chinese New Year? Basically, we came from an insight of everyone does the same things on social, and what do you need to do to stand out? And that year, the Galeries Lafayette Christmas campaign was based around a robot. So a robot had kind of landed in the center of Galeries Lafayette in that iconic archway. And so we did a robot takeover where we just kind of put out garbled ones and zeros on Weibo at the time for a series of this. And then we dropped in a binary code translator into it. But that was an example for us of just like, let's do something different. Let's do something that captures people. I guess in Galerie Lafayette's case, it did tie into the overall theme and it still felt luxury, but humans are humans, and social media, it's social. That's what it should be, but it's become very pedestrian and very boring in most locations. So it makes sense that brands would want to stand out and do something a bit more exciting. Adam, are there risks there for, we would go back to that idea of authority. Only Louis Vuitton perhaps can do a 48-hour stay in a high-end hotel. You can't do that if you're, I don't know, Dove. Is there a risk for a Western brand if they are trying to dive into these hyper-local trends?
It's a bit like my dad jokes with my kids. There's a very fine line between cultural anchoring and trend chasing. And I think there is a huge risk because the expectations are so high and because it's so nuanced. I think you can very quickly, A, be temporary, but B, get it completely wrong. And you can become a meme and basically undermine your DNA of being a maison very, very quickly. And I think we all have to remember in many ways that we are guests in an influencer's world these days. We're no longer, as a brand, leading the charge. And, I think that's quite a challenge, and brands have to be very careful. Now, of course, you can try things and maybe there's a bit more tolerance, but yeah, my concern would be getting it right. And you really do need to be on the pulse and sense check again. But also you've got to be nimble and agile and jump on the right trend at the right time. So it's really difficult, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the idea of authority and what you're allowed to do as a brand is really critical, particularly going into a new market, be it China, Japan, Korea, somewhere that's culturally quite different from your home market. We see this at Chinese New Year. What do you have the license to do? Just because your team have a brilliant idea, A, does it fit culturally? And even if it does fit culturally, does that feel right coming from a UK brand, US brand, Italian brand to be doing that campaign? I think it's really important that any level of relevance, be it insane trends or something hyper localized, need to fit. I guess then there's the aspect of co-creating. So we are seeing brands react almost in real time to certain trends, but using user-generated content. So I'm the big monolithic brand, but actually this person over here said something. We can use that because it's not our voice. And do you think that sort of top-down brand strategy era that's been slowly corroded away over the social media era, is that fully over now? And do brands need to be much more like a reactive, kind of fast-moving tech company almost than a traditional marketing house?
I think it depends on what brand you are, because there are many brands that their essence is trendsetter. Then of course they cannot follow other trends because it's just that's gonna damage their brand DNA. But if your product is it's like not timeless is the wrong word, but going back to Duolingo, if you have a service like a product, or you have Tencent, you have like all the platforms as product, and then jump on those trends can keep you relevant, and then that is a good thing. Or if you're like slightly lower end brands and you are doing, for example, FMCGs, or like or you need the mass awareness, then also that makes sense. So, but to answer your question, so the be it as it may, with that being said, the old and traditional way of doing marketing needs to be revisited, and even for the trend setting brands, because they cannot just keep doing the same thing over and over again. So co-creating with influencers, or like or offering more platforms for artistic and creativity, or just have more output, because what we are seeing here is that brands, they still have their brand account that is very beautifully photoshopped, or like or very beautifully like polished, but then they have a secondary account that is showcasing what does it look like in their office, just to make it more real, because nobody wants to talk to fake or like unauthentic content anymore, right? Because that's people wants to engage, and people want to feel what you're feeling, and then so they can decide whether they follow you or they just move on.
Super interesting. I think that, yeah, it is a real risk, isn't it, for brands? If you're not an insane brand, don't do insane things on the internet. But if you're FMCG, if you, I always think about McDonald's marketing department. It's been around for so long that it would be a fascinating place to work, because you have the authority and the ability just to do things that stand out, because people already know your brand and what you stand for ultimately.
Yeah. And also there are brands that their brand DNA is insane, right? And Liquid Death, like literally going insane, made their brand. But if you're not them, then don't do what they're doing.
Yes. Yeah. Again, I hadn't intended this to be a theme throughout everything we're discussing today, but actually authority, license, what do you have the seal of approval to do is a great measure of what your brand is. And then I think obviously in our world, we are taking brands into another cultural market, and you need to be extra hyper vigilant on that because you don't know the cultural nuance. You see a great piece of copywriting that's on the side of a bus in London designed to speak to North Londoners, for example, has extreme cultural relevance. Do you know that you've got that ability in China? Do you know that something you created for China as a whole has relevance in the north of China, south of China, east and west? It's highly unlikely that you're going to hit all of those cultural touch points, hence needing guidance, hence needing support in the rollout of your campaigns. So to wrap up for today, the age of a brand is much more of a mindset and not a kind of founding date of the brand itself. And success in China now can require a sort of digital soul, the ability to participate in the joke and not just an ad running it. If you aren't part of the conversation, you can be just noise. So it's really critical to get that conversation right. So on that note, that's it for this month. For all of the executives listening, whether it's turning a hotel room into a checkout counter or adopting insane internet slang, the theme is the same. Attention is the new gold. And those old silos of retail, hospitality, marketing are increasingly collapsing into one big immersive experience. So don't wait for the market to come to your store. Build a world that they never want to leave. All right. Thank you, everyone. I enjoyed that as always. Thanks. So that wraps up this session. We promised you the strategic edge at the start of the hour, but insight without action is just noise. So to get in touch with the Hotpot team for a discussion of how to apply these learnings, please head over to our website, hotpotagency.com, or hit the link in our show notes below. And if you're looking for deeper insights to apply directly to your own roadmap and you want to see the full data, charts, and deeper analysis, don't forget our China-specific deep dive resource, the China Playbook. Again, that link is in our show notes below this episode. I'm Jonathan Travers-Smith. Keep looking beyond the headlines, and we'll see you next month at the Hotpot table.